Interesting facts about the Bible, part 78. Did you know that the day of Pentecost opened the door for Gentiles to come to Messiah? As I stated in my Interesting Facts, part 70, because of the Tower of Babel, nations were divided amongst the 70 B'nai Elohim that they desired to worship instead of Adonai. Israel was the nation that God kept for himself, and so was the chosen holy people. This is why it is traditionally taught that the number of Gentile nations and languages was originally 70. However, Yeshua took back all authority given to them when he died, resurrected, and ascended into heaven. Now the nations were no longer under these pagan gods, fallen angels. When the authority was taken away from them, so was the curse of Babylon. This is why the disciples were speaking in tongues. When we read about the day of Pentecost in Acts 2, 9-11, everyone was gathered from all over the nations to make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem to celebrate Shavuot, a high holy day. But then all languages are heard at once. Something like this happens in Exodus 19:16 when God visited the people on Mount Sinai. There was thundering and lightning, and the word there for thundering is kolot, which literally means voices. When Adonai would speak, his voice was divided into the languages of the nations. All could hear and understand the voice of God. When the Spirit of God fell on the disciples, they were hearing the same thing, the voices of Adonai and the languages of all the nations, the Spirit literally speaking through them. This is where Peter truly received his anointing. He became an authority like never before. Shortly after this, Peter received his vision in Acts 10. Many mistake this as about being unclean and clean foods, but it's actually the calling of the Gentiles. The curse was broken and all nations could now enter into God's covenant. In verse 15, he says, "What God has made clean, you must not consider unholy." In verse 19, we see that Peter is trying to understand the vision, and 3 men come looking for him. The Spirit tells him to go with them. A Gentile, a centurion named Cornelius, had an angel of God tell him to send those men to collect Peter. God spoke to Peter to let him know to go with this man. Then in verse 28, Peter says, "You know it's not permitted for a Jewish man to associate with a non-Jew, yet God has shown me that I should call no one unholy or unclean." The vision is explained right here. This is when Adonai made it clear that no nation was now considered unclean.